So we're going to get started. So the first thing that we need to do is get grounded on the materials that you were given. So there were 3 booklets that you were handed, and these are basically the books that are going to get you through the next 3 weeks, okay? There may be some additional supplemental material, but for the most part, you have your Situational Judgment book, okay? We're gonna use this all 3 weeks. Then you have your ability to learn and apply information. It's a little thinner, all right? And then I believe the practice book subject area 1 is a supplemental book to your ability to learn and apply information. Either way, when you get through it, you'll see what it's really about. So your ability to learn and apply information is more like what we did in the first week with charts and things like that. So we'll go over those and go from there and see if you have any questions. So what we're going to do is, what I understand, that the Situational Judgment book is probably critical for you to be able to dive into and make sure you understand, because it's a critical piece of the test, is from what's told to me. So you have to be able to think on your feet and figure out what the appropriate response would be. So you're going to have to draw on background knowledge and the most reasonable approach, right? So we're going to go through some of those. All right, so I'm going to take a seat here, and we're going to comb our way through this book. So again, we're going to start with Situational Judgment. And I'm actually going to put a little time on to make sure that we stay on task. Okay. So, if you could please turn to page 12. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then it jumps to page 12. So we just want to go over that to make sure that you understand what situational judgment means. Situational judgment. This section tests for the ability to identify appropriate and effective responses to work-related challenges. Candidates will be presented with several scenarios that reflect the types of challenges one could encounter in a work environment. They will then be asked to rate the effectiveness of a number of possible responses to the scenario. Test task. In this section, candidates will read a scenario that describes a challenge one might encounter in a work setting. After reading each scenario, candidates will then be presented with options for addressing the challenge presented in that scenario. Candidates will rate the effectiveness of each of the response options using one of 4 possible ratings: highly ineffective, somewhat ineffective, somewhat effective, or highly effective. There may be several approaches that effectively or ineffectively addresses a given challenge. In other words, candidates may use the same rating. For example, highly effective, somewhat ineffective, highly ineffective for more than one response option for a particular scenario. All right, so we're going to go through the sample scenario. It says, setting. John is part of the night crew at a manufacturing company. John's supervisor has asked him to help Kevin, a coworker who has been on the job a few months less than John. Kevin has not been performing well in a particular area, and the supervisor wants John to help Kevin develop his skills. So here's the conversation. John: Kevin, I wanted to share with you some ideas that I really think could help you out. Kevin: thanks, but no thanks. I know our supervisor asked you to help me, but I'm doing just fine on my own. John. Actually, our supervisor is concerned that your performance in this area is not where it should be. That's why he asked me to try and help you. Kevin, look, I don't need your help and you're not my boss. In fact, you were only hired a couple of months before me. So why do you think you're so much better than I am? Instructions. A number of possible responses to the scenario are listed on the next page. Read each response option and then rate the level of effectiveness that best describes each possible response to the scenario using the scale provided. Be sure to rate the effectiveness of all the response options. Note that the same rating, highly effective, somewhat ineffective, highly effective, may be used for more than one response option. So now we turn to page 13, under subject area 4, continued. It says, please rate each possible scenario response using this scale. Again, we're going to go through the ratings. So highly ineffective, likely to result in far more negative than positive outcomes. Okay, so that's highly ineffective. The next one says, somewhat ineffective, likely to result in somewhat more negative than positive outcomes. The next one states, somewhat effective. It's likely to result in somewhat more positive than negative outcomes. And then the last one states, highly effective, likely to result in far more positive than negative outcomes. So possible scenario responses that you will rate. Says John tells Kevin that he is just doing what he was told. So how would you rate that? You have to review that in your mind. John tells Kevin that he is just doing what he was told. Number 2 states, John tells Kevin that they need to work together or the supervisor will be upset with both of them. So again, you're to think about which one of these has the proper response. Highly ineffective, somewhat effective, highly effective. All right, 3. John tells Kevin it is disrespectful to talk to any of his colleagues that way, even if they are not his supervisor. Number 4. John tells Kevin that they will both be more successful if they work together and learn from one another. And last but not least, John explains to Kevin that this is an area where he could be of help and suggests that Kevin may be able to help him in a different area. All right, so I want you, don't look forward, but try to rate those. Highly ineffective, somewhat effective, or highly ineffective. Don't read ahead, but try to figure out which one of those. All right, so you've had an opportunity to evaluate those. So we're going to go and read further down. It says solution. The correct rating for each response option is presented and explained below. Response option 1. The response is somewhat ineffective. Though it is true that John is doing what his supervisor told him to do, the response does not further the goal of helping Kevin develop his skills. Does that make sense? It's somewhat ineffective. Your number 2. This response is somewhat effective. Oh, okay. You know what? I don't have, so see Catherine out front, and she will give you 3 books. Yes, okay. All right, number 2, it says this response is somewhat effective. John's attempt to try and work with Kevin is positive, but the reason should be so they can help one another to each improve their skills or performance, not simply to avoid the supervisor's disapproval. Your response option 3. This response is highly ineffective. Calling Kevin disrespectful will likely only aggravate Kevin more, and this response does not further the goal of helping Kevin develop his skills. Your response option 4, this response is highly effective. This response emphasizes cooperation and mutual benefit and keeps the focus on the ultimate goal of performing more effectively. And last but not least, your option 5, it states that it is highly effective as well. This response represents a positive, constructive approach to the situation. John is demonstrating that he does not think he is superior to Kevin and that they can both be of help to each other to achieve the ultimate goal of performing more effectively. All right, so we are going to approach some of those types of questions, but the next few that we're going to talk about is going to just ask us to choose an appropriate response. But before we do that, let's just go ahead and read over test-taking tips for subject area situational judgment. So that's, there is no page number on this, but it's right after page 13, what we just completed. Test-taking tips for subject area situational judgment. It says, identify the problem the question is highlighting. Again, identify the problem the question is highlighting. Be sure to clearly understand the issue or area that the question is addressing. When reading the question, try to clarify what specifically is the element that needs your attention. If you skim through the scenario without clearly identifying the issue you should diagnose, you will be in a weaker position to tackle the question. Let me read that again. Be sure to clearly understand the issue or area that the question is addressing. When reading the question, try to clarify what specifically is the element that needs your attention. If you skim through the scenario without clearly identifying the issue you should diagnose, you will be in a weaker position to tackle the question. Next, it states, only consider the options listed. Focus on the responses that are in front of you. It may be that the course of action that you would most naturally do is not listed as an option, but don't let this occupy your mind. Also be wary of making assumptions. Try to mainly use the information that's given in the question. Analyze the responses that are provided and focus on their effectiveness and appropriateness. A situational judgment test will assess how you react and behave during a hypothetical work-based scenario. Can you handle conflict? Can you problem solve? Can you identify what's relevant and what isn't? Can you mediate or resolve situations? Are you a leader or a follower? Let's go to the next page. I'm going to read it. I'm going to give you an opportunity to read on your own because I know that we absorb information differently. Please remember to underline important information. And then we're going to go over the options and we're going to discuss them. A large fire occurs that you, as a firefighter, are helping to extinguish. An emergency arises and you believe that a certain action should be taken. Your superior officer directs you to do something else that you consider to be undesirable. You should A, take the initiative and follow what you originally thought to be the superior line of action. B, think the matter over for a few minutes and weigh the virtues of the two lines of action. C, Waste no time, but refer the problem immediately to another superior officer. D, obey orders despite the fact that you disagree. I'm going to give you a minute to reread, underline where you think is important information, what the situation is that you need to address, and choose the best option. Okay. So you had an opportunity to read it on your own and absorb it, try to understand what the issue was, and choose the best option. So I'm going to just speak out and let me know what you chose. What do you think is the best approach for this? Anybody? B, D is in dog, okay? Right? So we have a D. Anyone want to dispute that? Anyone else have a better approach? C. So we have D and we have C. Anyone else? Okay, so for the person that chose D, kind of speak louder and tell me why you chose D. Okay, he says that it's a superior officer and it's better to follow his directions, right? Or his orders. Say that again? Okay, so follow directions is what you say. Follow directions. Based on it being a superior, right? Okay, for the young man over here, you chose C. Tell me why you chose C. Say that again. Okay, so let me just review C. So C says, waste no time, but refer the problem immediately to another superior officer. All right, so let's just for a moment, so his response was, you want to show leadership skills, leadership ability, right? So this was for that, and then C was show leadership. All right, so what do you guys think? So we have two opposing thoughts. What do you think? You think D? So you said don't try to be a hero. So hero is only a sandwich, right? Okay, all right, so you say following your heart, you know it's the right thing to do, but it might cause some friction between you and your superior officer, right? That's what you're saying. All right, and so did I get anybody else? Anyone else? What do you think? Those are pretty good choices, right? So I want to hear from the rest of you. Okay. All right, so we have another person chime in saying that if you don't follow directions, right, it can cause disruption in the flow of trying to get this job done, right? So pretty good, right? And I do like the fact that you want to show leadership, but the best option, right, so you want to go with the best option is D. D is the correct answer for this particular scenario. And one of the reasons that they give is because you do not want to cause disruption or disorganization. It says, there would be chaos if each firefighter were to create his or her own plan of action and follow it. You must obey orders. Your superior officer has had greater experience in fighting fires. At the station house after the fire, you might discuss the orders with your superior officer and learn about the reasoning behind them. So in that situation, it's better to follow orders and then use your leadership skills after the task is completed to talk about what was the reasoning behind it, so on and so forth, and how it might have been handled better. But at the time, at the situation, because this is situational judgment. Situational judgment. In that instance there, it was better to follow orders. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to read the next one for you, and we are going to talk about it. The next one states, suppose your company is extinguishing a very small fire in a parked automobile. Your commanding officer directs you to perform some act that, as far as you can see, is not going to help in any way to put out the fire. Of the following, the best reason for obeying the order instantly and without question is that A, the fire department is a civil organization. B, your officer, after all, has been in the service for a much longer period of time than you have been. C, without discipline, the efficiency of your company would be greatly reduced. And D, the first duty of commanding officer is to command. So again, it says of the following, the best reason for obeying the order instantly and without question is. So I'm going to give you a minute to evaluate that, and then we're going to discuss your answers. All right, so one more time. Suppose your company is extinguishing a very small fire in a parked automobile. Your commanding officer directs you to perform some act that, as far as you can see, is not going to help in any way to put out the fire. Of the following, the best reason for obeying the order instantly and without question is that what? What did you choose? Go ahead. You chose C. Okay, so we have a C. What else? Anybody dispute C? Any opposing thoughts? No opposing thoughts? Everybody on the same page? Yes? No? Okay. All right. So the best option is C. And the reason that they provide is that teamwork is vital in firefighting. Discipline coordinates teamwork. Again, teamwork is vital in firefighting. Discipline coordinates teamwork. So let's move on to the next session. It says 3. Assume that you are a firefighter. While you are walking along in a quiet residential neighborhood at about 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, another pedestrian calls your attention to smoke coming from several windows on the top floor of a 3-story apartment house. Of the following, the best action for you to take immediately is to A, race through the house, wake the tenants, and lead them to safety. B, run to the nearest fire alarm box, turn in an alarm, and then run back into the house to arouse the tenants. C, run to the nearest fire alarm box, turn in an alarm, and stay there to direct the fire apparatus when it arrives. Or D, direct the other pedestrian to the nearest alarm box with directions to stay there after sending the alarm while you go to the apartment from which the smoke is issuing. So I am going to allow you to read that for a minute, absorb it, and pick your best answer. All right, so I'm going to read it one more time. It says, assume that you are a firefighter. While you are walking along in a quiet residential neighborhood at about 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, another pedestrian calls your attention to smoke coming from several windows on the top floor of a 3-story apartment house. Of the following, the best action for you to take immediately is to A, race through the house, wake the tenants, and lead them to safety. B, run to the nearest fire alarm box, turn in an alarm, and then run back into the house to arouse the tenants. C, run to the nearest fire alarm box, turn in an alarm, and stay there to direct fire apparatus when it arrives. Or D, direct the other pedestrian to the nearest alarm box with directions to stay there after sending the alarm while you go to the apartment from which the smoke is issuing. What did you guys choose? You chose C? You chose C as well? Any dissenters? Oh, D, you chose D. What else? You chose D as well? Okay, so we have C and D. Anybody else? So we scratched off A and B? All right, so let's just review those two options. So C says, run to the nearest fire alarm box, turn in an alarm, and stay there to direct the fire apparatus when it arrives. Then D, direct the other pedestrian to the nearest alarm box with directions to stay there after sending the alarm while you go to the apartment from which the smoke is issuing. So, talk to me. You think D, so I'm getting more for the D option? You switch from D to C and you switch from C to D. Okay, so talk to me, why?
Because they might need the pedestrians, like single absent, like when you see or single absent, something like that.
Okay.
And then that's why I put the pedestrian, that's why.
So you think that the pedestrian is a key player in the whole scenario, the pedestrian? Say that again? You're not on duty. Okay, so what did you choose? The firefighter not being on duty is why you chose C? Okay, so we have the pedestrian as a critical piece, and then you're saying that because you're not on duty, your obligations change. Because you're not on duty, your obligations change. Okay, anybody else? Any other reasons why you chose C or D? Say that again? Okay. All right. Okay, so you're saying kill two birds with one stone. Again, utilize the pedestrian. Yes. So you're saying that the pedestrian is not a critical piece. So that's why you chose C. Okay, I think I got you. All right, so I'm not going to torture you anymore, right? You ready for the answer? The answer is D. So the best in that particular situation is D. And the answer that they have provided for number 3, it states, sending in the alarm is the first priority, but the other pedestrian is perfectly qualified to do this chore. So whoever said that you would utilize the pedestrian in this case is correct. Assign the pedestrian to send the alarm and direct the firefighters while you, as a trained firefighter at all times, begin to rouse and rescue. So when you embrace that title is yours. Okay? All right, so again, this is all about what? Situational judgment. And they're giving you this. We could have gone and gotten some situational judgment about being a clerk in in a department store. But because you are trained, well, not training, you want to become firefighters, we're giving you the situational judgment scenarios as a firefighter, okay? So let's move on. Any questions about that one? No? Okay. So let's move on to 4. It says, assume that you are a firefighter off duty and in a uniform in the basement of a department store. A large crowd is present. There are 2 stairways, 50 feet apart. A person you cannot see screams, "Fire!" You should first. Is it A, rush inside and sound the alarm at a fire alarm box? B, find the person who shouted fire, ascertain where the fire has occurred, and proceed to extinguish the fire? C, jump on top of a nearby counter, order everyone to be quiet and not to move, find out who screamed fire, and reprimand that person publicly. D, jump on top of a counter, obtain the attention of the crowd, direct the crowd to walk to the nearest stairway, and announce that there is no immediate danger. All right, I'm going to give you a minute to absorb that and choose your answer. All right, so I am going to reread this and go through the options, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to have our debate. Number 4, assume that you are a firefighter off duty and in uniform in the basement of a department store. A large crowd is present. There are 2 stairways, 50 feet apart. A person you cannot see screams, "Fire!" You should first. A, rush inside and sound the alarm at a fire alarm box. B, find the person who shouted fire, ascertain where the fire has occurred, and proceed to extinguish the fire. C, jump on top of a nearby counter, order everyone to be quiet and not to move. Find out who screamed fire and reprimand that person publicly. D, jump on top of a counter, obtain the attention of the crowd, direct the crowd to walk to the nearest stairway and announce that there is no immediate danger. All right, so what did you guys choose? You chose B? All right. Anyone else? Any dissenters? You chose D. All right. What else? You chose A, so we got a variety here. Okay, we have A here. You chose A as well? You chose D. Okay. All right. Anyone else? All right, so let's just review A, B, and D again. So A says, rush inside and sound the alarm at a fire alarm box. Okay. B says, find the person who shouted fire, ascertain where the fire has occurred, and proceed to extinguish the fire. Then we have D. Jump on top of a counter, obtain the attention of the crowd, direct the crowd to walk to the nearest stairway, and announce that there is no immediate danger. So you all stayed away from C, right? Reprimand the... right? Okay, so I'll tell you you're correct in eliminating C. Okay, you were correct in that thought. All right, so talk to me. Who chose A and why did you choose it?
I just feel like, the sound of instantly like we're going to exit.
Okay.
I feel like that can get the crowd's attention to where to go.
Okay. Okay. Right. Use the alarm to be your voice, right? Okay. So A says rush inside and sound the alarm at a fire alarm box. And you're saying let the fire alarm be your voice. All right. What else? Who chose B and why? You're going to go ahead. It makes more sense. Okay. All right. So we have someone that changed their answer from B to A. Okay. And that's because they're saying, their reasoning behind that is that you would let the alarm be your voice instead of trying to scream in a crowded room. All right, who chose D and why?
There's no danger because you can't see the fire yet, so you don't want to create chaos. So just trying to direct people out.
Okay, so the person that chose D says there's no immediate danger because you can't see the fire, and you don't want to create chaos. So, without further ado, D is correct. In that situation, it states, the fire is not visible and is not yet a clear and present danger. Of far greater concern is panic and stampede. Deal with the crowd first, and if possible, direct someone to turn in an alarm at the same time. Okay, so that in that situation is the best option. And so the reasoning that you guys are providing are good reasons, right? But in that particular situation, they're saying that there's no clear or immediate danger, right? But you can use the alarm later, okay? All right, any questions, comments, or concerns thus far? No? Are you guys starting to think about how you approach some of these situational judgment scenarios? Okay? All right. So now we're going to move on to number 5. 5 says, suppose you were assigned to be in charge of a new headquarters bureau that will have extensive correspondence with the public and very frequent mail contact with the other city departments. It is decided at the beginning that all communications from the headquarters officer are to go out over your signature. Of the following, the most likely result of this procedure is that A, the administrative head of the bureau will spend too much time preparing correspondence. B, execution of bureau policy will be unduly delayed. C, subordinate officers will tend to avoid responsibility for decisions based on bureau policy. And D, uniformity of bureau policy as expressed in such communications will tend to be established. I'm going to give you a minute to reread and select your answer. Okay, so I'm just going to read it again. It says, suppose you were assigned to be in charge of a new headquarters bureau that will have extensive correspondence with the public and very frequent mail contact with the other city departments. It is decided at the beginning that all communications from the headquarters officer are to go out over your signature. Of the following, the most likely result of this procedure is that A, the administrative head of the bureau will spend too much time preparing correspondence. B, execution of bureau policy will be unduly delayed. C, subordinate officers will tend to avoid responsibility for decisions based on bureau policy. D, uniformity of bureau policy as expressed in such communications will tend to be established. So what do you think it is? Think it's D? Okay. All right, we have D. What else? Any dissenters? Everybody's on board with option D? Right? Yes? Okay. You guys are okay? All right. So, D it is. D, it says, expressed in such communications will tend to be established. And the reason for that is, it says, if one person oversees and signs all correspondence, that person has control over the content of the correspondence and can ensure consistency of policy and tactfulness of expression. Does that make sense? So it's not a negative thing. And in your some of your options, they tend to go the negative route, right? So you kind of, all of you, based on selecting D, steered away from the negative outcome. It wasn't a negative outcome, right? It was more positive. All right, so let's go ahead and do some more. All right, so we have, question? Okay. All right, so we have number 6. Number 6 states, suppose you have been asked to answer a letter from a local board of trade requesting certain information. You find that you cannot grant this request. The best way to begin your answering letter is by A, quoting the laws or regulations that forbid the release of this information. B, stating that you are sorry, the request cannot be granted. C, explaining in detail the reasons for your decision. D, commending the organization for its service to the community. I'm going to give you a minute to read and absorb that and see what your best answer is. Okay, so I'm going to reread this again. Number 6 states, suppose you have been asked to answer a letter from a local board of trade requesting certain information. You find that you cannot grant this request. The best way to begin your answering letter is by A, quoting the laws or regulations that forbid the release of this information. B, stating that you are sorry, the request cannot be granted. C, explaining in detail the reasons for your decision. D, commending the organization for its service to the community. All right, what did you guys choose? You chose A? You chose, somebody else chose B? Okay, I hear A and B. Anything else? Nothing else? All right, so for the person that chose A, talk to me. Why did you choose A? It seems like the best answer? The most direct answer, okay. A says, quoting the laws or regulations that forbid the release of this information. Okay, so he says that's the most direct. Who chose B and why? Okay, all right, so he says that it's stated in the passage that it couldn't be granted. So just restating, say that again. Short and simple, keep it short and sweet. Yeah. So if the regulations is 3 pages, you want to condense it? So, all right. Okay, so I'm not going to torture you anymore. So we got some feedback on A, quoting the laws or regulations that forbid the release of this information could be plausible, right? But if there's 3 pages of regulations and laws, you can't state it, right? And then you have what he said, B is the most direct way, is correct. B is the most, the correct response, okay? It says, this is a matter of tact and public relations. Begin with your regrets and then explain the reason for your refusal. So it's about tact. We all kind of know that there are laws and regulations. So the most I guess they say, it's about public relations, right? Don't hit them with the book and say that you can't do it because of the laws and regulations. But just simple apology, and you keep it moving, short and sweet. All right, so yes. So B is the correct answer. B is the correct answer. All right, guys, we're rocking and rolling here. We're moving along. We are going to do some more, of course. So we have number 7. Number 7 states, assume that you have been asked to prepare an answer to a request from a citizen of the city addressed to the chief of the department. If this request cannot be granted, it is most desirable that the answering letter begin by A, telling the person you were glad to receive the request. B, listing the laws that make granting the request impossible. C, saying that the request cannot be granted. D, discussing the problem presented and showing why the fire department cannot be expected to grant the request. 1 minute to evaluate that on your own, and then we'll talk about your answers. All right, so I'm going to read it one more time. Number 7 states, assume that you have been asked to prepare an answer to a request from a citizen of the city addressed to the chief of the department. If this request cannot be granted, it is most desirable that the answering letter begin by A, telling the person you were glad to receive the request. B, listing the laws that make granting the request impossible. C, saying that the request cannot be granted. Or D, discussing the problem presented and showing why the fire department cannot be expected to grant the request. What did you guys choose? You chose C? All right, what else? Any dissenters? Yes. You're leaning toward A? Okay, a soft lean. You chose A as well? Okay, so I got you. So he said, for A, telling the person you were glad to receive the request because they're a citizen and you want to kind of show some respect to the citizen, and that you can't, after saying that you were glad to get their request, then you would go ahead and explain later why you couldn't grant the request, okay? So just showing a little bit of respect, all right? And so, who chose C? You chose C. Okay, so I'm going to come to you, so have yours ready. Why did you choose C? It's direct? So you said don't encourage them? He said don't encourage them. We don't want your letters. No, I'm just joking. Okay, sorry. I like to laugh sometimes. All right, so he's saying that it's more direct, right? And not to lead the... Say you don't blow smoke, right? You're not blowing smoke up citizens, right? Okay, go ahead. 7. You said C, you chose C, right?
7.
Huh? 7. Yes.
Yeah, I said C because you're not in a position to tell someone your opinion on the matter or their, it's not your place to say.
Okay.
So the word can't be granted. You're not in a position to tell.
You don't have to blow smoke, right? Yeah, you guys thinking alike? Don't blow smoke, right? Okay. So now leading on the citizen. So the best option here You guys said C or A or C. And C is correct. C is correct. Right? And the answers that you gave, we're going to compare that to what the book says. So number 7, the answer says, this is a business letter, which is what this is. It should come straight to the point and then explain in greater detail later. So they're saying, get to the point, right? Say that you can't do it. I guess you don't have to provide a lot of explanation, but you can provide some. So it says, and back in the statement in the passage, it says, if this request cannot be granted, it is most desirable that the answering letter begin. So begin by, right? So that's key. So you can start off just saying that it can't be granted, but you can, I guess, make the citizen feel like, they didn't waste their time writing the letter, right?
Excuse the interruption. This Thursday, 9/24, there will be no class held. The makeup will be Friday, 9/25. Again, this Thursday, 9/24, there will be no class held. The makeup will be Friday, 9/25. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. Check my, okay. Well, so not really. If you decided that you're going to come on Thursday for a repeat of this session, you're welcome to, but it's going to be canceled this Thursday, and the makeup day is going to be Friday. So I believe they're going to post this online. So that would be for those people that are looking at it online. There's no class on Thursday. You come on Friday. Okay. So no class 9/24, makeup session 9/25, Friday 9/25. All right, so just to get back to what we were talking about, so the key word in that passage, right? So I got a lot of great explanations, right? So they're just saying, how would you begin the letter? It's a business letter, so you want to be business-like, right? And you want to get to the point. But if you wanted to add some extra stuff to let the citizen know that their letter was written and it's not a waste of time, you can do that. I'm going to say that is kind of subjective, right? I mean, you don't want to talk about something that you have no authority to talk about, right? But within the realm of your job description, right, you kind of get a understanding of what you can talk about and what's forbidden to be talked about, right? So you, in any position, right? So me as a teacher, I'm not going to take on the role as, for the principal. I don't have that authority. But if I'm given certain authority to talk about certain things, then I'll do that, right, within the scope of my job description, right? So I would think that, to be cordial to a citizen if they wrote a letter, that if you're held with the responsibility to respond to them, then you have a little latitude to say certain things, right? And you can blow smoke. No, I can't do that. Okay. Does that explain? Right? Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next one. All right, for number 8, we're on number 8. And number 8 states, assume that you have been requested by the chief of the department to prepare for public distribution a statement dealing with a controversial matter. For you to present the department's point of view in a terse statement, making no reference to any other matter, is in general, A, undesirable. You should show all the statistical data you used, how you obtained the data, and how you arrived at the conclusions presented. B, desirable. People will not read long statements. C, undesirable. The statement should be developed from ideas and facts familiar to most readers. And D, desirable. The department's viewpoint should be made known in all controversial matters. I'm going to give you a minute to review that and come up with your best answer. All right, so I'm going to read it one more time. All right, number 8 says, assume that you have been requested by the chief of the department to prepare for public distribution a statement dealing with a controversial matter. For you to present the department's point of view in a terse statement making no reference to any other matter is, in general, A, undesirable. You should show all the statistical data you used, how you obtained the data, and how you arrived at the conclusions presented. B, desirable. People will not read long statements. C, undesirable. The statement should be developed from ideas and facts familiar to readers. D, desirable. The department's viewpoint should be made known in all controversial matters. All right, talk to me. What did you choose? You chose D, okay. All right. Anyone else? You chose C. All right. Anything else? Anything else? All right. So, for the person that chose D, talk to me. Why did you choose D? Okay. All right. So he's saying that it's desirable. They should get their point of view out quickly, right? D was the one you chose. Was it D? Okay. Okay. So again, it says desirable. The department's viewpoint should be made known in all controversial matters. All right. So who chose C? Talk to me. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, so before I give you the answer, I want to go back to something in the passage, the word terse, right? So again, when you run across words that might be familiar or unfamiliar, terse is like, that's the word that kind of opens up how you should respond, right? So what does the word terse mean? Abrupt, it's a negative term, right? Wait, say that again? Okay, terse, all right. You're saying terse is more like direct and to the point? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so to how you approach passages, right? So your reading comprehension, your situational judgment, it's still important, right? Certain words will kind of help you to infer, right? To take a reasonable guess as to the tone of a passage, right? So terse would mean that whatever this person is writing is negative, right? So if you understand that terse is a negative word, then you would know that that's probably not a desirable way to communicate with the public. Does that make sense? So that one word kind of clues you into that situation and how it should or should not be handled, that one word, okay? So you could immediately eliminate two of your options. So B and D would be eliminated. B and D would be eliminated because of that word terse. He issued a terse commentary to the public, right? And so it's not good. So you're going to eliminate it, right? And then you're left with your 50-50 with the words undesirable. So you're left with A and you're left with C. So based on that, I want you to take another minute and see which one, because I didn't tell you whether C was right or not. I want you to look at that again and tell me what you think. Is it A or is it C? All right, so talk to me now. So now that we've eliminated two based on that one word, nothing that he did was desirable. So now we're going to focus on undesirable. So what do you think? Is it A or is it C? You think it's A? I have C. Did someone say A? Did I hear A? Okay, so the resounding C's that I heard is correct. C is correct. Huh? Too much information on A? Okay. So A says undesirable. You should show all the statistical data you used, how you obtain the data, and how you arrived at the conclusions presented. All right, and so you're saying that undesirable C, the statement should be developed from ideas and facts familiar to most readers. And so that's key. All right, so let's go and talk about, just read what the book states. It says 8. You must not appear to be arbitrary in dealing with controversial matters with which the public is genuinely concerned. Explain in a way that is clear and reasonable. Okay? Any questions, comments, concerns on that? All right? So again, what are you gathering from this, right? It's situational, right? You got to think about you can use background information, but typically you have to kind of guess in a firefighter situation, right? You have to use logic and reason. You have to kind of dissect it and understand the vocabulary that's involved, right? So those are things that you have to do all around when you're dealing with reading comprehension. There was something else I was going to tell you, but I forgot. So we'll get back to that. All right, so any comments, questions, concerns with the situational judgment? Oh, that's what I was going to say. When you're dealing with situational judgment, you don't have to have that actual experience because you're not firefighters now, right? So you have to employ a lot of reason and analysis and making sure that you understand the vocabulary to break it down, right? So you don't have to have prior knowledge. But when I say prior knowledge, it means that, okay, I might have had another situation, right, that I've had to use some type of tactic or strategy to resolve an issue. We've all had issues, right? Negative experiences, positive experiences. So we can draw from those things and say, okay, I handled it in this way, right? So you know, if you have a girlfriend, you don't want to set her off by saying something that's terse, right? You guys are going to walk away with that word. Don't be terse or make terse statements to your girlfriends. All right, so here we go. We're going to do a couple more, and then we're going to move on to ability to learn and apply information. Okay, so now we have 8. Let's do 9. 9 says, you have passed the first few days of training and are now operating a cash register position next to a friendly coworker who has been working here 2 years now. It's a quiet Tuesday morning as you are scanning a customer's items through the register. The customer produces a coupon. which appears genuine and related to your store. But you have never seen this before and weren't notified of what to do with coupons during your induction. From the following options, decide which would be in the most effective response. A, refuse to accept the coupon, stating that you haven't been trained to accept these. B, tell the customer that this coupon isn't accepted at this store. C, ask the customer to talk to the floor supervisor to know how to claim the coupon. D, politely ask the customer if they could wait just a moment while you speak to your colleague to learn what to do. 1 minute to read that and evaluate which answer you want. Okay, I'm going to read it one more time, and then you're going to tell me what you think. You have passed the first few days of training and are now operating a cash register position next to a friendly coworker who has been working here 2 years now. It's a quiet Tuesday morning as you are scanning a customer's items through the register. The customer produces a coupon, which appears genuine and related to your store, but you have never seen this before and weren't notified of what to do with coupons during your induction. From the following options, decide which would be the most effective response. A, refuse to accept the coupon, stating that you haven't been trained to accept these. B, tell the customer that this coupon isn't accepted at this store. C, ask the customer to talk to the floor supervisor to know how to claim the coupon. Or D, politely ask the customer if they could wait just a moment while you speak to your colleague to learn what to do. What did you choose? Okay. Chose D, awesome. Okay, so I have a D here. All right, what else? Anybody? Any dissenters? Everybody's going with D? Yes? Okay. And so D it is. I think that one was kind of straightforward, right? We're all shoppers, right? And if you don't take my coupon, then I'm gonna have a problem with you, right? You better learn how to scan my coupon, right? Okay. Okay, so D is the correct answer. It says, this is the most effective response. You have identified that there is no need to reach a decision rashly, as the store is not particularly busy. Given your colleagues' experience, they have probably come across this before and will know what to do. All right, so you guys are rocking and rolling. So we're going to end on number 10, and we're going to pick up next week with the following problems, okay? So number 10 states, you are an instructor who teaches training courses, which are required monthly to all air crew on the base. Recently, an exercise was conducted in which only a portion of the requirements of the monthly training was presented to the air crews. A senior officer comes to you and asks you to generate a training completion document indicating that the air crews received the monthly training requirement. You verify in the training requirement directives that the exercise scenario is not sufficient to meet the monthly training requirement. You are to select the most effective and the least effective action, A through E, in response to the situation. A states, so for A, you're going to choose, you're going to choose just one, most effective or least effective out of the four. So A says, prepare the paperwork as the senior officer asked. The request was probably meant as a direct order and should be followed. B, inform the senior officer that the exercise scenario does not meet the training requirements, so any crew that did not attend the monthly training will be delinquent for the month. C, prepare the paperwork as the senior officer asked. Tell him that you will fulfill the request only on this one occasion. D, immediately report the senior officer's request to your supervisor. E, tell the senior officer that you will need to contact higher headquarters authorities to get clarification before you can process the request. You have 1 minute to evaluate that and choose one for most effective and one for least effective. Okay, I'm going to read it one more time. Okay. It says, you are an instructor who teaches training courses, which are required monthly, to all air crew on the base. Recently, an exercise was conducted in which only a portion of the requirements of the monthly training was presented to the air crews. A senior officer comes to you and asks you to generate a training completion document indicating that the air crews received the monthly training requirement. You verify in the training requirement directives that the exercise scenario is not sufficient to meet the monthly training requirement. You are to select most effective and the least effective action, A through E, in response to the situation. We have A, prepare the paperwork at the senior officer as the senior officer asked. The request was probably meant as a direct order and should be followed. B, inform the senior officer that the exercise scenario does not meet the training requirements, so any crew that did not attend the monthly training will be delinquent for the month. C, prepare the paperwork as the senior officer asked. Tell him that you will fulfill the request only on this one occasion. D, immediately report the senior officer's request to your supervisor. E, tell the senior officer that you will need to contact higher headquarters authorities to get clarification before you can process the request. All right, what did you guys consider for the most effective response or action? What's the most effective? You chose B for most effective. All right, anyone, any dissenters? Any arguments there? No? All right, so what is the least effective response or action? What'd you get? You chose C as the least effective? Any dissenters? You chose A for least effective? Anyone else? For the least effective? Yes? All right, so talk to me. For the most effective, why did you choose B for the most effective? Did you choose somebody? I can't remember. You chose B? Okay, go ahead.
Just B because the other answers were just too extra. Just doing too much. So went up to the guy and told him what he did was wrong. We probably do better than going all the way up to the higher ups.
Okay. Escalating things when they shouldn't be? Okay. Okay. Right. Right. So not being combative in the response, not escalating things. Right. Right. Okay. Very direct, right? Efficient way of handling a particular problem. Probably is not like a huge problem, right? So not escalating, not being negative. And so some of the words that you saw in there, you said it was doing too much. And doing too much to me was just very negative response to what it is. So you chose B as the most effective way, and so I'm going to tell you that that is correct. B is the most effective way. So now B is out of the equation, right? So now we have A, C, D, and E to choose from for the least effective You guys already put C and A over here, so talk to me about why you chose C and why you chose A. Anybody want to chime in? Go ahead. Okay. All right. So said C felt like prepare the paper as a senior officer as tell him that you will fulfill the request only on this one occasion. Isn't that's super negative, right? I'm gonna do this, but don't ask me again, right? So it's taking a very negative stance, right? And so that, yeah. So are you going to eliminate C? Is that even an option? So talk to me about eliminating. Are we going to eliminate it? Are we going to consider it for, because we can only choose one for least effective. So let's look at it like this. The least effective could be an option, but it's not an effective option, right? But we can consider it. The other ones are just, you just know, we're not going to even consider that one. We're not going to put it in the least effective. You see what I'm saying? So we need to eliminate something here. Which one are we going to eliminate? We're going to eliminate A for the least effective. So again, just so that you're clear on the mission here, we have a most effective option, which we have agreed to as B, right? And now we have, 3 or 4 other options. Well, we have to eliminate something. All of them aren't going to be classified as least effective. Like, there needs to be one that we could use, but it's not really the way that we want to go. The other ones, we just need to throw them out in the trash because they don't work. So. Okay. Right. Okay. So good. So it's coming from a superior, right? Just because it's coming from a superior. Okay. So. I hear what you're saying, and what's clicking in my head is you're saying that this is the least effective response just because it was a superior, we're just going to do it, or whatever. Even though on the first ones we said that we follow directions, right? You're supposed to follow directions. Okay, but this one is saying, prepare the paperwork as the senior officer asked. The request was probably meant as a direct order and should be followed. There is some negative connotation there that we can't quite discern. It could be an option, right? Because we talked about the other ones, following orders, we have senior officers that we need to listen to. But for this one, it's saying that we're putting in a least effective mode of taking care of this particular situation. So again, between A and C, you're saying that A is the better choice for the least effective. A little tongue to the better choice for the least effective way to handle the problem, right? Does that make sense? Okay. And then C, because it's so negative, prepare the paperwork as the senior officer asked. Tell him that you will fulfill the request only this one occasion, right? That's just very, I'm going to use the word again, negative. We don't even want to consider that. So between A and C, the least effective way to handle that problem would be A. C we would just eliminate because of the stance that it took that, I'll do it this one time, right? Right. So, and this is a little weird to explain, right? So you're looking for, okay, You're looking for options that are plausible, right? And you have to eliminate what is absolutely off the board that you would not do. But that, you see what I'm saying? So that go ahead.
I get what you're saying, because it is confusing to try to discern which. I see what you're saying, like, it is the most negative, but we're talking about least effective.
You're right.
And in that case, it would be A, because that is like the least effective.
The least, right, so it's a plausible answer, but it's the least effective way to handle that situation.
Differentiate between.
Right, yes,
I see what you're saying.
yes. Does that, everybody okay with that? So you have options that could be plausible, then you have some that's just off the board. You just want to sweep those away. You can't even consider them as being an option for the most effective way to handle something or the least effective. Those other ones, you just eliminate them because they're too negative. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, okay. All right, guys, so what I'm going to do for you, we're at the, wow, time flies. So we're at 7:20. I'm going to give you a 5-minute break, okay? 5-minute break. We come back, we're going to do the ability to learn and apply information. And then if we have some time, we'll carve out, maybe 20 or 30 minutes to do some math. Does that sound like a plan? Okay, so take a 5-minute break, come back, all right? All right, so the next section that we're going to be working on is your ability to learn and apply information. Ability to learn and apply information. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn to page 1. Actually, let's turn to page. Well, actually, there's no page number. So if you turn to page 1, you have 2, 3, 4, and then you have another page where it says subject area 1. Subject area 1. So again, this is the ability to learn and apply information. Your new booklet that was passed out to you. When you open the book, you'll see at page 1. You're going to keep flipping till you see page 4, and we are going to go on the next page, which does not have a number. Okay? It says subject area 1. Ability to learn and apply information. These questions test for the ability to learn new information and apply it to answer questions effectively. Candidates will read information presented in a training lesson and then answer questions regarding the information and procedures covered in the training lesson. All information needed to answer the questions will be provided in the training lesson. And candidates will be able to refer to the training lesson when answering the questions. Some of the questions may require candidates to combine information from different portions of what has been learned in the training lesson. No prior knowledge of any specific job or subject matter is needed. Test task. In this section of the exam, candidates will read information from a training lesson to help them learn how to operate a piece of equipment. The training information is about a piece of equipment that is not real. It was created for the exam. Because the piece of equipment is not real, no prior knowledge of any specific job or subject matter is needed to answer the questions in this section. Candidates will study the information presented in the training lesson, take notes if desired, and answer questions about information contained in the training lesson. Each question will be followed by 4 possible answers. Candidates must select the correct answer to demonstrate what they have learned in the training lesson. Candidates will be able to refer to the training lesson while answering the questions. So it says sample training lesson, Introduction to the Systems Monitor. This training lesson will provide you with a brief introduction to the Building Safety Systems Monitor, i.e. Systems Monitor. The Systems Monitor is a well-mounted panel that monitors the building's security and fire systems, including the building's smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, alarm systems, and fire sprinkler systems. Smoke detector monitoring functions. A picture of the systems monitor front panel is presented in Figure 1. At the top left of the panel, you will see the smoke detectors section with 8 displays labeled SD1 through SD8. These displays provide information about the 8 smoke detectors installed throughout the building. Each display has an indicator light and a status message display. So flip the page. And so here you will see a visual of this Systems Monitor front panel. So whenever you are looking at graphic information, what should you do? Of course, read the title. Read all pertinent information. And we already talked about reading the questions first to ground you on what you're looking for, okay? So this one says, Systems Monitor front panel. You have SD1 through SD8, and you also see on the other side that you have CO1 through CO8. The SD1 is the smoke detectors, and the CO1 through 8 are the common carbon monoxide detectors, okay? Under the visual picture, it says the table below presents the various possible smoke detector conditions. What will be displayed on the indicator light, the status message display under each condition, and the appropriate action to be taken under each condition. So table 1, smoke detector conditions. You have your titles at the top. You have 4 columns, and the first column states smoke detector condition. The second column states indicator light will be. The third column states status message display will read. And then the last column, appropriate action. So for the first row, under smoke detector condition, it says operating normally, no smoke detected. Indicator light will be green. Status message display will read blank. Appropriate action, no action needed. The second row states smoke detector condition, smoke detected. Indicator light will be flashing red. Status message display will read 808 smoke detected. Appropriate action, alert building security, who will investigate the area and contact local fire department if necessary. Immediately after alerting building security, you must alert a supervisor. The third row states smoke detector condition, failed self-check. Indicator light will be red. Status message display will read 801 failed self-check. And the appropriate action, send technician who will examine detector and repair or replace it if necessary. For the last row, it states smoke detector condition, power loss to smoke detector. The indicator light will be off. Status message display will read 802 power loss, and then the appropriate action, notify electrician. Under the chart, you will see, this concludes our brief introduction to the smoke detector monitoring features of the system's monitor. So your first question, sample question on the next page is, if power is cut to a smoke detector, what will you see displayed on the system's monitor for that detector? What will it be? The answers are there. Don't look. All right, so it says if power is cut to a smoke detector, it says what will you see displayed on the system's monitor for that detector? And it is the 802 power loss. Okay? And then they have the other choices there, why you should choose only one. Okay? And so if you flip the page, you have sample question 2. What should you do first if the system's monitor shows a smoke detector with the message 808 smoke detected? So of course you would go back to your chart and look for 808 smoke detected. And so they said, what should you do first? So then you would look at appropriate action. So it says alert building security. So hopefully that is alert building security A. Okay? So what should you do when you're looking to use ability to learn and apply information is to know that all of these scenarios are made up. You do not have to know any prior knowledge of anything. You simply have to put on your analytical hats and evaluate the information that is given to you. Go back and read your question first, go back, look at the chart again, and then answer your questions. All right, so we're going to move on to what it says, interpreting charts and tables. Charts organize data. Tables, on the other hand, are used to represent a large amount of information in an organized way. All information will be presented in columns and rows. Let's look at 5 tips for interpreting questions using charts and tables. Of course, read the title. Carefully read the title of the graph, chart, or table. Look at key. Make sure you understand what each part of the key, if a chart or graph, means. Read other titles. Make sure you read the title of each row and or column on a table. Look at figure before questions. Get a general understanding of what the chart or table's information relays before looking at the question. And so this is different from what we've been talking about the last 3 weeks, right? To read the question first, right? So reading comprehension, you definitely want to read the question first. On the other hand, when it comes to charts, I personally like to get a handle on the chart first before I look at the questions. Okay? So for your reading comprehension, definitely look at your questions first. If you run across a chart, get familiar with your chart. Okay? All right. So lastly, it states, read carefully. Can't say that enough, because we've talked about reading something and thinking you understood it and you didn't understand it. So read carefully. Carefully read the question to figure out what information you're going to be looking for. Make sure you understand which part or parts of the chart or table will provide you with the relevant information. All right, let's flip on to the next page. Here's where you're going to get your practice. Okay, so we're going to take this step by step. You have information here on this first page, followed by 4 questions. Okay, do not go ahead. I am going to give you 5 minutes to evaluate what's written here on the left side and to answer the questions. Then we're going to discuss it. So don't move ahead even if you finish before the 5 minutes. And if you need more time, I'll give you more time. All right, guys. So what did you do? Do you need any more time? A minute or two? 1 minute? Yes, no? You okay? Okay. All right, so as you can see, all the information was there that you needed. All you need to do is read through, still use some of your strategies that for reading comprehension, underline things that you think might be important, go to the question, read the question, get grounded with the chart, making sure you understand what the chart is saying. It was a lot, it was dense. I call it dense information because it's like kind of almost nonsensical. It's not like fluent sentences that you would just read, right, and understand it. So it's like a lot of jargon in here. So for number 1, it states, based on the indicator status, what is one potential problem that could result in a PWR off status? Is it A, B, C, or D? C? Everybody's shaking their head with C. So I do believe that is correct. I had to come up with my own answer key. So C, I believe, is correct, all right? Number 2, according to the indicator status, a back on status could indicate what? What is it? A? A, okay, I think that is correct. A, all right. Number 3, it says, which of the following is an example of an indicator status on the PLC CPU? Is it A, B, C, or D? C, okay. All right. And last, 4, when the HVAC PLC is in normal operation, what light will be on? B, that's what I have. Okay, so we're rocking and rolling. So we're going to try to get through maybe 1 or 2 more because I do want to save a little time for math. Yeah, so let's go ahead, and I am going to put another 5 minutes on the clock for you to turn the page and look at the chart for boiler maintenance and answer the 5 questions there. All right, you can go now. So there's a lot of information to digest there, right, with the daily, weekly, monthly, semi-annually, and annually information, trying to run through those. All right, did anybody need any additional time to evaluate this, or are you good? Okay, so the first one states, when recording gas pressure monthly, what should be checked? What'd you guys get? I heard a couple. C, okay. C, belt drives. All right, number 2, annually, what should be tightened? I hear A. Anything else? No? Okay. A here. No dissenters for that. Number 3, this boiler inspection schedule is for what type of boilers? Anybody? Huh? B? Anybody else? Did you have trouble with that one? It didn't explicitly state it, right? You had to kind of infer based on the information that was given to you. So if you've been in my class, we talked about explicit information and implicit information. So it's not explicitly stated. Where did you find your information? For those that chose B, what did you gather to make the selection B? For the daily, in the daily column, right, they kind of gave some information about water. So what do we know about water? Water creates steam, right? And they also mentioned gas. right? So the best option there would be B in my estimation. Okay? Any questions, comments, concerns about 3? Okay, so you just had to put some information together based on what was given to you. All right, number 4, it says which items may be done more than once per day. It says per day. Okay. What is it? You said B? B? You guys chose B? And it was right at the bottom of your chart. Okay, and last but not least, number 5 says, which of the following maintenance should be performed semi-annually? What is that? B? You guys got B? All right. So how did this feel? It's just a lot of information to kind of digest, right? But everything is there. Some things are not explicitly stated, but you have all of the information there to come up with a reasonable and logical answer. All right? So we're going to do the same thing. We're at the 8 o'clock hour here. We're going to do another one. We'll try to get 4 in there, and then we're going to take some time and run through some math topics. Okay? So 5 minutes for the next graphic information. Control panel features. All right, the first question says, if there is a power outage, how will homeowners know the house is not ready to arm? What letter did you get? A, B, C, or D? C. Everybody okay with C? C is what I have. So we're going to count C as correct. 2, what feature shows all system information, status, programming, and functions as the keypad? What'd you guys get? D? I'm hearing resounding D. That's what I have. So we're going to go with D. 3, what button on the indicator will blink white? I want to say blink white during an emergency alarm. Yeah, we don't need the S on there. What button on the indicator will blink white during an emergency alarm? What is that? A, okay, that's what I have. So A for 3. 4, during the entry delay, what does the arming system display? What is that? C, that's what I have. All right, guys, so it is 8:12. We have a young man here who had a question, right, about some math. So we are going to pick up on the situational judgment and the ability to learn and apply information next week, okay? So, tell me your question that you had from the problem that we had. We worked on, if you guys worked with me last week, we did some percents using the box method, and we worked on some proportions. So you can ask me your question. Read the, what was the question? You wrote it down? You wrote it down? Oh, it's in that one, in that book. Okay, tell me what page, which one are you dealing with? Hold on. Okay.
I was looking at this one.
This one, an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter based on her salary for the year. If she earns $1,800 a month and her bonus is through her salary, her bonus previous quarter. Okay,
Yeah.
so number 10, right? That's not it. You know what? Let me borrow your book. Let me borrow your book. Because I can't find mine. Okay, for this problem that he's asking, and you want to use the box method for this, right? It says an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter. What is it? Huh? Oh, okay, so this is in the practice book subject areas 2 and 3. All right, and he is, I think this is the second, no, this is the first one. The first practice math. Number 10. So the first practice set of problems. So it says an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter based on her salary for the year. If she earns $1,800 a month and her bonus is 3.5% of her yearly salary, her bonus for the previous quarter is, all right, that's a mouthful. Okay, so, okay, so first, I think this is a two-part question. All right, so first we have to do, an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter. If she earns $1,800 a month and her bonus is 3.5% of her yearly salary, her bonus for the previous quarter is. So that, you can't just use the box method. You have to kind of walk through that. So let's walk through that. If she earns $1,800 per month, and her bonus is 3.5% of her yearly salary. So then we're going to have to take that, multiply it by 12. Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. So we have 4 quarters in a year. Hold on, I got a call coming here. All right, this is a lot. Okay, so give me a moment to think through this. Oh, hold on. All right, so okay. All right, so I am going to so what I'm trying to do here is to simplify this. It says an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter based on her salary for the year. So I do need to figure out what she makes in a year because the 3.5% is based off the yearly total. Okay, so an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter based on her salary for the year. So her salary for the year is $21,600. 1,800 times 12, because that's the month. Okay, and her bonus is 3.5% of her yearly salary. So we would have to take that. So this is where we could use the box method once we figured out the year total. So the box method would be, we have 3.5 over 100, and then of her, so 21,000 is the total, right? And so then we would have to figure out what that portion of her bonus is up here. So let's try that. So, us an option for $756. So I'm assuming that we're correct. So it was just a two-step problem. Again, this is in the first practice set of problems. Your number 10. Again, it says, an employee receives a bonus at the end of each quarter based on her salary for the year. If she earns $1,800 per month and her bonus is 3.5% of her yearly salary, her bonus for the previous quarter is, I don't like that question, because quarters are every 3 months. Okay, so let me look to see if I have the right answer. Hold on. So that is correct. I just don't like the way they worded it at the end, quarter, because it quarters every 3 months, right? The answer is C. So if we ignore the quarter piece, what was it before the previous quarter? Yeah, right. So the relevant information was her monthly salary times 12 to get the yearly. And then the 3.5% of that is her bonus. So her bonus for the full year is $756. It says her bonus for the previous quarter is, that throws it off. Yeah, I agree, that throws it off, because the $756 represents the bonus for the entire year. That's based on the year's salary. Does that make sense? You guys see that problem in there? So we're going to go with the answer that they have, and again, that's how you come up with it. Your monthly salary times 12, and then your 3.5% of the yearly salary. So here you could use the box method. You just have to get your yearly salary first. Okay? All right, so we don't have a lot of time to do any more, except I'm going to read one. You tell me, you want a percent problem? There are word problems. A percent problem, a proportion problem, or a decimal word problem. Proportion? All right, so let's do a proportion problem. We might be able to get 2 in. We'll leave right at 8:30. All right, so a proportion problem. All right, so we have a brand of vitamin tablets come in 3 different sizes. Okay, you're gonna have to write this down. A, 60 tablets for $5.40. B, 100 tablets for $7.80. And C, 150 tablets for $11.70. Which size is the best buy? So this is really a unit rate problem, but you can set it up as a proportion. So no, this is something extra that I brought in. Okay, so I'm gonna read it one more time. Okay, so a brand of vitamin tablets comes in 3 different sizes. 60 tablets for $5.40. 100 tablets for $7.80. And C, 150 tablets for $11.70. You guys got that? A, 60 tablets for $5.40. B, 100 tablets for $7.80. and C, 150 tablets for $11.70. Which one is the better buy? Which one is the better buy? So we talked about, based on some of the problems that you guys had in your practice thing, we could set it up as a proportion to solve. So this, you're going to do the same thing. So you're going to evaluate each one of those. So we have 60 tablets. For $5.40, right? We have 100 tablets for $7.80, okay? And then we have 150 tablets for $11.70. And you're going to figure out which one is the better buy. So what is it that you want to understand? You want to understand, what does it cost for one tablet? And so then I want to know what the cost is, which is N, right? Again, I want to know, I want to bring it down to one tablet. How much does it cost? Again, one tablet. So that I can compare all of these to one, a price for one tablet. So we have N. I'm using N as a variable. So what do? How do you solve that? Then you cross multiply. Absolutely. So you have $5.40 equals 60, right? 60 N. So then we take 60 and divide it. So $5.40 divided by 60 is what? You got that? What is it? 9 cents? You got that? Yes, 9 cents. So this is 0.09 cents. For this one, when you cross multiply, what do you get? Yep, 0.078. And then this one is same thing, 0.078. So when you would answer that question, B and C, because we have A, B, C. So B and C are the same cost. They're a better buy than option A. All right? So again, you can probably figure out a much easier way, but I'm telling you, there are some problems that was in your practice work that you could set up easily as a proportion. So I just decided to bring some more proportion or unit rate type of problems. So we're at 8:25. I'm going to throw one more on the board for you. One more. It says a 1.2 ounce piece of almond candy contains about 230 calories. A 1.2 ounce piece of almond candy contains about 230 calories. About how many calories does a 4 ounce piece contain? Set it up as a proportion and solve it. I'll read it one more time. A 1.2 ounce piece of almond candy contains about 230 calories. How many calories does a 4 ounce piece contain?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, somebody want to tell me how to set it up as a proportion? You got it? You want to? You got it now. Say that again. Say that one more time. So So 1.2 ounces over, he said 230 calories, right? You're absolutely right. You got it. If you're able to work through and set up that proportion, you got it, right? So then you cross multiply, so you have your 1.2 N equals 230 times 4, which is what? Say it. 920, yes. Okay, and then so N equals 920 over 1.2 divided by 1.2. What? 766.6. And so you could do a couple things with this. You could round it, because this was what, 766.66666, right? So the little bar at the top, if you saw an answer with a little bar, it just means that this number is repeating. Or you can take it and round it to the nearest ones place, which would be 767. Or you can round it to the tens place. So you have to see what your options are for your answers. Okay? So again, these are just some extra problems. They're kicking us out. All right, we're done. Have a good night. I'll see you guys next week.